Tell me the difference between the powerlifting's nutritional needs and a strongman's nutritional needs, generally.
Heavy physical stressor in motion, heavy physical stressor not in motion.
Okay, that was good. That was about as fucking basic as you could go. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk.
So that to me, at the bare bones, is exactly what we have.
Yeah, I like that.
You know, so I have to be able to basically facilitate and fuel a muscle for either umpteen number of repetitions or one big ass repetition.
Yeah.
And that's really the main difference between the two, because one is highly muscular endurance based. One is highly strength based, really. I mean, you're trying to pop off one good one, really. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you want. Be it the world record, the national record, be it your own PR. When you go to meet, you're trying to pop off that one good one, squat, bench, dead.
Yes.
Well, same thing when you go to strongman, but my guys are trying to pop off one good one for the log for 8 because it's max reps, and the guy before him might get 7, so they've got to be able to hit 8, or the guy. So there's all these variables in play. So you're taking an athlete with a lot of the same ways that I would approach my power lifter, but I'm fueling them differently because I know that the glycogen usage is not going to be on par. And this is where I've pissed off my powerlifter clients and friends, but I'll beat them down a lot because I'll tell them, I assure you, you did not exhaust glycogen out of your muscles like you think you did today hitting your 5-3-1. You're good. We're going to be able to top that back off, and you're going to be able to get back out there. So here, I'm going to go ahead and focus on recovery. Whereas my guy who's doing, you know, with strongman or whatever, and they're doing the deadlifts or something, if it's a max rep deadlifts, you know, it's 800 pounds for reps, and they've got to get 8, 9, 10. That's an entirely different animal right there, because you better believe glycogen is being depleted. And in fact, that reminds me, slightly off topic, but on topic. Arnold Classic 2020 up the road here in Ohio. The year they debuted the Wheel of Pain, that gargantuan freaking thing from the Arnold movie. So Martins was in that. And Martins Licis is my client. We won 2019 World's Strongest Man, and we won the Road. We won the Arnold in 2022. So all these things. But on that, you know, I was checking his blood sugar, as I will do on occasion with the guys, and kind of make sure that we're topped off. So in an environment of a contest, I will check their glucose levels, because I have going into that contest checked. So I kind of know when their own individual unique gas tank is full. Your gas tank is different than mine. Mine is different than Tom Stoltman, so on and so forth. So knowing what their full meter is. So in this case, I'll use Martins' example. When Martins' glucose levels are about 145, that's his high end. So I will keep topping them off between events. And keep in mind, there's all these other things that happen the day of, the night prior, and all this stuff. But during the contest, I'm continuously topping them off because I'm looking for that sweet spot, because I've already predetermined his top end is about 145. So if we're getting ready to go into the next event and I check him and let's say he's at 110, well, I know he's not topped off. Topping off is important because it's my safety valve. It's my, oh shit, what next? Because they never know, you know, a lot of these things, they're going full bore like that. How fast and hard how many repetitions around can I turn this thing? But when they go out there, they don't know what that actual distance is going to be. They just know they're going to go until basically failure. So with something like that, let's say that I hadn't been aware of what that parameter was with Martins, and I, you know, we ate whatever we ate the night before that I specifically will target. I had him eat whatever I have him eat that morning. But then as the day goes on, we're 6-7 hours past breakfast, blah, blah, blah. Had I not known what his level is, I wouldn't have known that when Martins went round and round and round on that thing and he won the event, climbed on top of it, and there's all these awesome photos and stuff from that event. When that event was over and he basically passed out, he was still awake, passed out, and on the floor, they threw the oxygen mask on him. He was fully fine. Literally, as he's down there with the oxygen mask on him, I'm pricking his finger because I'm curious, my own fascination. I want to see what his blood sugar level is. So when I checked him, this is right after that event, he was 47. So I had topped him off prior to. So before he went out there, I had made sure that he was at his sweet spot, which is 145. And he went out there. So again, he won that event. Imagine how that athlete's performance is compromised if his glycogen stores aren't fully topped off so that he has that, oh shit, sitting there ready to tap into when the wheels start to come off the bus.
Out of curiosity, did you test him again 5-10 minutes later to see if it just oxygen restored some of that?
Yeah. Literally while I was laying down there, I also gave him a Rice Krispie treat. That's the shit I ended up being known for. Out of everything in life, I'm the fucking Rice Krispie guy.
Yeah.
But literally he ingested that and he quickly comes up. Because again, I know how fast my guys will come up or go down on stuff. And he quickly bounced back up. And he was just in disbelief. He goes, that is nuts. He goes, I can't believe it pulled out that much of my glycogen. He goes, where did it go? You know, Martins is awesome. He doesn't want to know from a scientific standpoint. He just wants to know where to go. Did it evaporate? Where the fuck did it go? And I told him, I said, dude, when you're doing something like that, you're exhausting such large muscle groups, your quads, your hamstrings, your chest, his arms. I mean, everything is going on that grind. It is whole body. So the contractions are so much from those large muscle groups that circulating blood glucose, instead of being circulating through his bloodstream, it's being pulled into those large muscle groups like the pump. You know, he's literally pumping. It's a pump channel as he's pushing that around. So he basically pumped everything into his muscles so that it wasn't necessarily available in that circulating, like I can think clear kind of standpoint to be utilized for energy. That's where people drop the ball a lot. They'll fuel up to be able to have a max contraction event or be able to get their strength, but they don't account for you still have to have circulating glucose available for your brain and for your lungs to be able to go to their next level. During that same event, your muscles are going to theirs. So blood glucose is circulating, and the minute I start to do stuff, I'm opening channels telling it to go somewhere. So you're doing the pump. That pump is from the glucose being shuttled in. You still have to have circulating enough glucose in order to not compromise your performance. And so that's why kind of knowing and measuring and figuring out where your sweet spot is so that you're compensating not only for the event, lift, whatever it is you're about to do, but also to fuel it. Because otherwise you peter out. So the circulating glucose, let's say it was 100 and it's pulled into his muscle group during that event. Now what? It's all his pump is compromised. His pump and his performance has just compromised the fuel aspect of things. The strength was there for the muscular contractions, but the fuel, the energy to keep going and going and going, that had to be accounted for, which we did by the hair of our chinny chin chin. Any lesson, and he, you know, has a compromised performance, maybe doesn't even get a full turnaround.
Wouldn't that have to start months prior, though?
Oh, yes.
You know, as far as laying that foundation, because the reason I want to go here is people are going to hear that and think this is what they need to do day of, but they can do that and it's a blank slate. You're going to fuck it all up.
100%. So many times people will come to me. The most common question that people will email me is, hey, I have a contest coming up. What should I do the day of? Yeah. And I cringe. You know, it's like, to me, it's like I've, you know, a swim meet showed up and I decide, hey, I'm going to jump in the water tomorrow. What fucking stroke do I do? Like, do I do freestyle, butterfly? Like, I don't know what to do. And it's that same thing. Like some freaking unicorn sandwich is going to drop out of the sky for you to eat the day of your competition. And this magical thing is going to occur that has never occurred to you at any point during your training block.
Yes.
That's the part that drives me nuts. It's like with my clients, same thing with the lifestyle. And as we're going along through the training block, what I do besides just the core diet is I target trainings. So you might tell me, okay, this week's agenda is I'm going for max on deadlift. I'm going to go real heavy on log, but it's going to be basically based on reps. And I might go ahead and do a full event day on Saturday. So I take that information in and then I go, okay, so I got 2 agendas that I have to accomplish. I have to not beat the shit out of your insulin sensitivity from Monday to Sunday because I still have to keep you sensitive. Because I'm going to target those specific trainings that you identified as your main focus for the week. I'm going to target those and I will build the cheat meals, so a surplus around when you're doing those. Because I am literally not just trying to give you extra fuel for those events. Yes, I am. But that's the little picture. I'm conditioning you for what's going to happen 12 weeks from now when you're competing. And when I put the peak week in process, I'm conditioning your body to hyper respond to the stimulus of those additional macros. So that's the thing that people really don't understand is that you have to condition the body all along the way to hyper respond. Whether you're losing weight, gaining weight, strength goal, whatever it may be, at the end of the day, dieting is a skill. It is a skill. It has to be acquired. It has to be learned. And just like in here, it is learned through repetition. You know, you get better on squat because you identify cues. You get better at dieting because you identify cues. You identify when you go into this workout if you felt like the energy wasn't quite there by the time you hit the max rep. You go into this cardio session that you might have as part of your week, since we were talking about strongman. You know, you identify that, God, you gassed halfway through. You're able to identify that information as it comes to you because of the cues that you have gotten used to identifying from being consistent in the skill that you have learned. And that's the biggest thing that I try to teach people, is that dieting is a skill. It is a skill set. It is learned solely through repetition, just like anything else. And a client this morning actually had emailed me with their check-in, and they had noticed that he's in the heaviest part of his block, a power lifter. And Logan was like, hey, I'm at this part where I've noticed that my appetite is starting to come down. And he's hitting 90%, that type of thing, as he's getting ready here in about 3 or 4 weeks. And I had told him, I said, that's excellent, Dina. And he's extremely strict. Because he's good at practicing his skill of dieting, he's able to notice those differences that most people wouldn't. If an individual is not strict on their diet and they have all these fluctuations, it's no different than coming in here and, you know, well, your program calls for this, but today I'm going to kind of veer off and do this. Or it says stop here. God, but I'm feeling good today. I think I can hit that. I want to go up more. If you throw in all these things and remove the skill set, which is basically the parameters and structure of consistency, you can't pick up on cues. And in my opinion, I don't think there's anything more important to being able to take a body somewhere it doesn't want to go, you know, than being able to learn and pick up on those types of cues through developing the skill of dieting. So that in Logan's case, it's basically when clients start identifying things like that to me, the first thing I pick up on is, okay, your central nervous system is getting crushed. That's his CNS that is absolutely starting to get fatigued and is getting crushed because of where you guys are in the block. And when that happens, the first thing that starts to take a hit is the appetite. Most people don't really understand why that happens. They just think, I'm getting bored and tired of eating the same shit all the time. Even though my diets, I think, have a lot of variety. But anyhow, what happens, though, is that when your central nervous system gets the shit beat out of it, your cortisol levels are just skyrocketing. Well, everybody knows that. Stress. Physical stress, mental stress, cortisol levels are high. Problem is, good and evil. Insulin good, cortisol bad. You know, as far as opposing, cortisol opposes the actions of insulin. So you are finding your appetite getting crushed because your insulin sensitivity is getting crushed because of the influence of cortisol on your insulin sensitivity. It's reducing it. So you are no longer efficiently handling the macros as you were, say, last week or 2 weeks ago. So when that type of a thing happens, I have to be able to quickly flex and make him understand, okay, here's where you are, and here's where we're going to kind of do a little bit of a reset to get your central nervous system to calm down as best I can while you're still bludgeoning it.
All right, so if I'm understanding what you're saying is, given that scenario, a loss of appetite, right? So there's the metric, you know, down. If somebody's just winging the diet, right? Some days they eat a lot, some days they don't, just like the normal person. That loss of appetite could be a result of numerous different things because nothing's really being controlled to be able to know what it could be. I could say sleep could be an example too, like what are the hours of sleep? The more metrics that you have that you can keep some kind of control of will allow you to help determine exactly why that is what it is. Because it could just be they're not eating enough, but they don't know. But if they're on point, you know if they're eating enough because they're eating plan, right?
Yeah, they're picking up on their cues that they're able to identify from the structure and the consistency. And, you know, the sleep metrics like you talk about, there's all these different things that kind of come into play and have that influence, you know, other things like that. So let's say that Logan identifies that, you know, my appetite is starting to take a hit. I'm getting it in, but it's definitely more of a task than it was previously the week or two. My sleep is starting to be shit. when you see things like that, those are all, at the end of the day, if you're a nutritionist, you're kind of like a glorified food detective because you're trying to identify and solve the puzzle.
What are the metrics that you're using to decide if you're going to be able to pivot? So the insulin sensitivity, is that glucose levels, like morning glucose levels?
It's a lot of both. So it's glucose levels, or because of the way I design my diets, I have a lot of control on the expectations that I know what the diet in these combinations will produce number-wise in a healthy individual, if you will, not somebody with some sort of impairment going on a will. The diets, and it's like we're going back to kind of like the insulin and how to steer these types of things. Another thing that a lot of people really miss is your combinations of your macros are equally as important as the macros themselves, and not just the protein being in its own bubble, but it's the influence of those other macros on each other and the form that they're in. So with that, and talking about the insulin, stuff like that, if I have you eat a steak and a potato, beef and a potato, and I check your blood sugar level, I'm going to get a level. If I have you eat ground beef and mashed potatoes, beef, potato, same amounts, let's say 9 ounces and 10 ounces, I'm going to have a completely different response. Same exact macros, same exact everything, but you're going to have a far different insulin response to that because the form and the combination of those macros at that meal. So here we go back to that middleman, if you will. So when you have something that's mashed, I mean, I could say smoothies. I really hate the smoothie thing.
Just digestive.
I just really hate the smoothie thing. But in a way, mashed potatoes are a potato smoothie.
Yeah.
You are taking the middleman out. The body doesn't have to really digest that. So you're skipping a step because the initial breakdown of the large molecule is gone because now we're in a small molecule. Mashed potatoes are already almost in a paste. So the body can absorb it and get at it quicker. That is advantageous during certain timings of certain things. Pre-workout, a quick fuel source that can get at you that you can utilize prior to, like, let's say an intense day, that's optimum. Compared to, say, a slower carbohydrate situation for a day like that maybe isn't really going to truly saturate your system until you're about done. So it's the identifying the different macros, their forms, and the combinations of that will also bear significant influence on that meal, the blood sugar levels, and what kind of transpires from there. And so having to relay that to your clients as you're kind of toggling, conditioning them, moving forward towards that peak for that contest. So oftentimes my clients, we might be on potatoes at some point as an example, as an allowed carb choice, the way I call it. As we get closer in, I might start switching off to some of those more easy burn things like mashed potatoes, mashed sweet potatoes. Of course, rice is a quick one. Because I'm trying to condition them for the peak that's coming up so that I'm targeting them along the way with their specific workouts and getting their body used to accurately addressing this influx of larger macros, but also at being able to efficiently assimilate those macros in a little bit of a quicker time frame. Because once we start hitting peak week, like bodybuilders call it the same thing. Once we start hitting peak week for like my strength guys, I start putting in a little bit more junk because at the end of the day, you can eat clean, but if you eat how you always do, your results are going to be what they always are. Like I said, that unicorn is not going to drop out of the sky when you're having the exact same foods that you always eat on the day of the contest or the week of the contest. If you have several, like strongman, world's strongest man, that's all week long. But you need to have a different stimulus than what you would normally have, but you have to condition the body along the way to efficiently deal with that stimulus through those food combinations. As an example, just on the different things that can go on with those food combinations, like with my diabetics. So I'll have physicians from Scotland or God, where else? Ireland. They'll send me patients that they're having an issue with that they just can't, they just can't get into play. And they're like, oh, I'm sure they're just eating like crap or whatever. And it's like, well, they might be, but at the same time, it could be just simple things that they're not understanding. And unfortunately, like with Ryan, when I was talking about testing him for the protein and the amino acids, and they're still eliciting a glucose response. You could ask 99 diabetics, hey, you get to pick one of these two things. 1 slice of cheese pizza, 2 handfuls of gummy bears. Which one of these two things is going to mess your blood sugar up worse? They're all going to say, oh, it's gummy bears, that's sugar. They're wrong. It's going to be that pizza. You've got carbohydrate, you've got fats from the cheese, of course, and you've got protein. But because you've got a high rate of carbohydrate and fats together, those fats extend out the duration of action of that glucose that's circulating the system. So that blood sugar level rises higher and higher and higher because it's in the system longer. And when you take an individual who's already having trouble clearing it out, which is what diabetics do, the sensitivity is reduced so they don't absorb or utilize. That blood sugar level will always tend to rise higher than if they just ate the gummy bears, which was just sugar, and that's it, though.
So the gummy bears would spike and then just come back down.
It's in and it's out. And they don't truly release an accurate insulin response. They either have an inefficient one or they have none if they're a type 1.
Well, what if they ate butter with it?
Same thing. And you can, if you pair up, and that's where those food...
No, wait, same thing as it's going to spike, or it's just going to make it
It's going to be like
longer?
the pizza, and it's going to last longer.
Yes, okay.
Because you're packaging, and now you've taken, let's say, the protein, which was in that protective bubble. In that type of an individual who has an impaired situation, you've basically put that carbohydrate in a protective bubble, because the fat is now the thing that's protecting it, allowing those levels to raise, which is inefficient. The glucose is not entering the stream, and so entering their cells. And so that's where you end up in those same type of situations with athletes. You're trying to condition them to when that slice of pizza comes in, it's sucked in, it's utilized. But it's like anything else, it's conditioning. It's, it doesn't matter if it's an enhanced individual, a natural individual, if it's a power lifter, if it's a strongman, if it's bodybuilding, if it's Johnny Hawkins from the band Nothing More, he's my client. He's super crazy ripped, and he runs around all night for 2 hours in an arena. Crazy show. He's ripped and lean as hell. What good does it do me to have all that? So that's kind of the same thing. You can have these really elaborate, crazy, dialed in, every medical parameter known to man in play, every testing going on every 30 days, but it doesn't reflect the lifestyle because I don't have the player. I don't have the thing to play that diet on.
If somebody would, in my brain, say take casein that burns slower, I'm like, I can just take fucking whey with almonds, and then how much difference, is that really going to make with how that spreads out, where when you're dealing with insulin sensitivity with, forget the whey and the protein, because it's a little different as far as, but still it impacts that to a degree, that changes that conversation differently because it's at a higher level where that's going to spike for a longer period of time.
Right.
Which you may or may not want.
And that's the key.
Yeah.
It may be an asset or it may be a detriment. And by targeting those individuals' specific training sessions, conditioning them along the way to kind of better assimilate that larger influx of macros to have that type of a response, it can be an asset, it can be a detriment. Because, again, you can either use it to accentuate the fuel or you can use it to accentuate recovery, especially fats post-training and in the evening. It would be hard-pressed for somebody to convince me that, like, lifestyle allowable, that if an individual has the financial means, has the time means, has everything under their control, and they could literally dictate every single night, I'm going to have a steak when I go to bed, and they are an active athlete, a good cut of steak, tenderloin, a tomahawk, whatever you want. You would be hard-pressed to convince me that there's anything out there that could possibly be better from a recovery and I don't want to use the word anabolism in that, because if you're an enhanced athlete, the damn anabolic effect of the foods, it just doesn't matter too much. You've got that covered. But for just in general though, because that steak, there's the slow tear down, breakdown process overnight while you're sleeping. What happens while you're sleeping? That's when your body's doing the repair work in the first place. It is like the ultimate pairing in the ultimate world if the lifestyle and all the stars align and you can do that. But as a coach, I have to be aware that that's just not realistic for most people. And that includes the top athletes in the world. That's not realistic for many of my guys. And so I have to know, well, what's the next weapon in my arsenal that I can put in here? Or how can I assimilate that on a budget? How can I, it's got to be all these things that you can put together. I have clients in Dubai and I'll use camel tenderloin because that's something that they readily have access to. And it is an asset for me to be able to utilize within their diets in that type of construct.
Well, this is, we spoke earlier, it's constantly changing because you can have an athlete that you bring on that may not have the greatest financial means from the jump, But then over a period of time, they do. But the reason they do is because now they have all these other added responsibilities that they have to do, which sucks up a lot more of their time.
Well, and Brian, of course, is a great example of that. You know, in 2011, when I first started working with Brian, before we won the first title, that version of Brian, that's a way different version of Brian than the version of Brian that exists now. You know, strictly from, well, not even strictly, I would say from a financial means, obviously, but from an equipment accessibility standpoint, from everything.
Yeah.
But he has these benefits financially and equipment wise, but guess what he also has? He has expanded family roles that he didn't have in 2011. So as one thing shifts and turns into another dynamic in the lifestyle that is of a huge asset, he has other responsibilities and things that then have to be accommodated for along with those assets. So he's still got to be able to merge all these worlds at once. And so here we are again with diet and lifestyle and where that goes.
It's like, I've always explained that as kind of like Odin's big fuck you to the meathead world. Like when you start, you don't have access to shit, you know, then once you get older, it's like, now you got access to everything. Best gym, best drug, you have access to all this shit, but you're fucked because now you only got 2 years left. You know, it's like, why couldn't I have this shit from the beginning?
Right.
You know, and
well, and that's like the thing, like, what would you do if you could go back and tell your high school you, like, some things and tips? What would you do differently, or what would you, with the resources you have now or the information you have now, how would that be different?
Find a way to have the resources earlier.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Without responsibility, which is fucking impossible, right? To be able to go that route. Let's take a bathroom break real quick. Then when I come back, I want to get into, like, where would you start, right? So somebody hires you, then here's the base. Like, what is the base? If I'm going to help somebody with their training, and might be this would be a good way to explain it. And they're coming out here. Before I even say anything, I'm just going to like watch what they do to see if they're even interested in any help, right? I'm not going to give any unsolicited help or anything like that. But to make a long story short, that would be a vetting process where you have a questionnaire, stuff like that. So I have the vetting process of before I'm going to do anything with that. And then if I'm going to start working with them, and the first thing I'll start helping them with is pretty much just the warm-up part of the training. They care, do this, this, and this. And a lot of that is to see if they're compliant, but it's also to help build their core strength, because it's things most people won't do. Glute ham raises, pull down abs, hanging leg raises, stuff like that. So there's a purpose behind that, where it's the very basic level to start, so I can start to see how are they going to recover. This is kind of not that hard. It's very minimal. Like, is they going to get sore? Are they going to recover? And so that would be a base. And then the base will extend into like a little bit bigger base. And then once they get to a certain point, then it becomes, this is that moving thing that is like an equalizer that you're going to start playing the switches with, right?
Yes.
So we've been kind of talking about that, right? Getting them to that base, what would that look like for the majority, for more than average, right? Picking my words, because everybody's so different, right? So more, because it'd be easy to say 5 meals, right? But some people may not be able to do that, right? So a solid base that you would start from before you can start controlling the dials to that the listeners could use as a takeaway, but it also is going to provide the right knobs to be able to play with down the line.
Whenever I first start with someone, one of the first things that I take a look at, again, we go back to lifestyle, is one of the questions on there is like, basically give me an example of a typical day in your life. Like, I literally want to know, like, do they go to the library for 2 hours? You know, do they take the kids to the pool? Like, I want to know a typical day in the life. I want to know a typical time you wake up. I want to know a typical time that you go to bed. I want to know, do you have issues with, you know, either making food or having food available with your particular job, career? Like, we've got surgeons and stuff like that. Obviously, if they're getting jumped into a surgery, you know, they can't freaking, their time is quite limited. So I need to know all these types of things so that I can design the core of my diet, which is my core diet that allows me to know what's going on with you from my window. So I design a diet, not necessarily because it's the very best diet that's ever existed and there's no other diet that can possibly be better than this diet. I'm first designing this diet with these items that I have selected because I feel I can personally best manipulate either by removing or adding to these core items. So I'm not trying to knock your socks off with like overcomplicating the diet for you. I'm trying to make it to where it can slide right in and it's going to drop into your lifestyle. And like you said, it might be 5 meals, it might be 3 meals, it might be 6 meals. Whatever you have time for and that is realistic within your life is what I'm going to do. I'm going to design items. I'm going to design the diet to have items that either require cooking or don't require cooking. Items that it can be store-bought, items that can't be store-bought, items that you can roll through a drive-through, items that you can't. Because do I think that a protein shake at the end of the day, if we're just going to go, I guess, apples and apples, is a protein shake superior or even equal to a steak? No, absolutely not. But what category is that steak sold in the grocery store? It's in the meat section. It's in the food section. What category is that protein powder sold at in the grocery store? It's in the supplement section. What's that word mean, supplement? It means basically optional, not mandatory, not required. You might use it if it's a supplement to something or to take the place of. So 6 of one, half dozen of the other. This is still better than this. However, for the guy whose lifestyle does not allow him, my surgeon, his lifestyle does not allow him to do that, that protein shake is absolutely a good, viable source. Mm-hmm. Because guess what? It is better than nothing. That I can guarantee.
Yes.
So it's kind of going along those things. Like I said, my diets, I'm never like that type of individual. Like it's this way, the highway. It's got to be first and foremost within your lifestyle to where my diet, you can drop it in and plug and play and go. Not have to disrupt, well, fuck, now I got to somehow make time to cook this here, prep this there. I'm going to have the wife cover this so that I can get to that. You're going to fail. I, as your coach, am setting you up for failure on your money. That's fucked. Like, I'm not in the business to steal from people. I'm in the business to make you successful, you know? And so it's my job to drop it into your lifestyle to give you the best, most realistic chance you have at being successful with your life. You shouldn't be penalized because you work a 9-to-9 job and have 2 kids at home and a wife, and you have to move people around and take care of the house, and you've got a sick mom that you check on 3 days a week. You should have every opportunity to be as successful as that individual who just all he has to worry about really is training because he owns a business.
Yeah.
So it's my job as a coach to do that for you. And so it's building all these different items that you can either just grab and go, that you can drop into your diet. If I need to design it to be 3 meals a day, I can design it to be 3 meals a day. Is that optimum? No, it's not. But you deserve me to give you the opportunity to try to better yourself from point A to point B based on your lifestyle. So I'm gonna give it my all, and I'm gonna make 3 work for you. It's not, science is gonna show 5 or 6 meals a day is gonna be better, but it's not better to you because you'll never be able to access it. So it's gonna be dropped into your lifestyle, plug and play, so that you can literally hit the ground running. You know, I've had individuals who have even told me, like, I'm so busy, I'm here and there, and you know, they're obviously not on a cut diet. They'll be like, I can't even get to the meat. I don't even have time to cook the meat. Dude, roll through McDonald's and get 10 hamburger patties, take it home, pull them out of the Tupperware 2 and 3 at a time as you need them. You're done. 30-second reheats. Like, where there's a will, there's a way. Well, okay, well, I made the food, but the problem is I don't eat this cold food. Who the fuck's going to eat cold salmon? Well, okay, man, I get you. I'm right there with you. But let's take that Tupperware and that gas station that you pass by on the way to work that's got the microwave next to the hot dog spinner and the nachos. Slide your fish in that for 1:30, you're good to go. Where there's a will, there's a way. But it's my job to give you every opportunity to be successful, irregardless of your lifestyle and irregardless of your responsibilities and commitments. I feel too many times there's diets out there where people think they either need to be wealthy, and some people will say, well, you got to be wealthy to afford me. But it's not the same thing what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the necessary supplies, the necessary ingredients. Mm-hmm. It's got too many times people look at that and they won't even start. They won't even try because they're like, I can't afford that. people look at like Tom Stoltman's diet or Brian's diet. You know, he's got the blessing of Trifecta, this amazing company to handle the meal prep, and it handles a lot of the financial resources, which Brian could handle anyway. But people think that I can't be the next Brian Shaw, or I can't be the next Tom Stolman or Rob Kearney, or I mean all these guys, because I can't afford that. I can't do that. So I'm just not even going to try.
But see, what they forget there is all those guys were those guys before they could afford to be those guys.
And that's social media, right? Everybody always sees the best of the best and the latest and the greatest.
Well, they still had to figure out,
Right.
you know,
Right.
how to do it. Where
Absolutely.
I think the biggest takeaway on what you said is, you know, a lot of things that you'll see I just use that you need to eat every 2.5 hours, every 3 hours, something like that. And then that will push people away to say, well, I can't do this because I can't eat every 2.5 to 3 hours. Or fuck it, you just eat every 2 hours, you eat more. You know, whatever it's going to be, there's an answer and a solution that's inherently built into there, but it may change what those foods and what those meals are going to look like. So if we just do like a basic recovery day, not a training day, so we won't throw in any pre or peri workouts or anything like that. On a basic training day, if it's, you know, a meal plan for somebody that...
If you're an active training athlete, is making sure that you're facilitating tissue growth and repair. But protect that bubble, throw something with it. Like I said, that's a good, healthy choice. Throwing something with it isn't a bag of Cheez-Its or a bag of Doritos. You know, it's a healthier, easy carb choice that is a mimetic for something that has much healthier option. A bowl of oatmeal is a very healthy option, if you will, ideally, that you could choose on a diet. But if you don't have the time or you're caught because of your wife's situation like that with a flat tire, grab the bar of granolas. It's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And it's far better the alternative, which is nothing during that gap. You have to be a big picture person to keep your sanity with a diet. If you try to be like Alcoholics Anonymous and go one meal at a time, you'll drive yourself nuts. You're going to obsess over the next meal that's coming, the next meal that's coming, the next meal. Oh, shit, I missed this one's fucked. Now I got this one. And I sure as hell can't screw this one up. Or just screw it. Today's done. I'll pick it up tomorrow. Or these 2 days, I'll pick it up next week. You've got to have that big picture mentality of, let's say that you eat 4 meals a day, 7 days in a week, 20. You know, you got 28 opportunities to get better in that week. 28 opportunities to keep yourself moving forward towards your goals. Let's say life happens to you 7 times on those meals, and you got to make that instead of, you know, your steak and potato, you had to do the RTD and the granola bars. Okay. 21 of those meals were perfect and exactly as system designed. The other 7 still kept you going in the right direction. Compared to if you flat out skipped those 7 meals, you literally were putting the brakes on your progress, or worse, if you're grabbing the Doritos or whatever, you're undoing that forward progress. So it's always having those available lifestyle choices that you can grab and go, you know, that yes, you know, it's like diet soda. You know, people always go, oh shit, diet soda is chemicals. You're going to die. Really? Says the people eating the Nachos Bel Grande with their lap and I mean, really?
Yeah.
I assure you.
Same people taking 2 grams of shit a week.
Yeah, it's like, that's what we're going to focus on.
Yeah.
That chemical. Okay.
Yeah, I've always been one that I can go extended periods of time without eating. That's always kind of been my nemesis with that. And it serves me well as I get older, right? Because it's easier to try to keep my weight down. It's like, okay, look, it's just, I have a very...
And benefits like autophagy and all these things that are real.
But it's what I've always found was if I was gaining or putting, and sometimes, and we'll talk about sometimes gaining is a motherfucker. Sometimes it's worse than losing. For me, it's way worse than losing because of things you're talking about. Yes. But I could always bookend a day. It's like I am guaranteed, you know, the protein at the end of the day before I go to bed and when I fucking wake up. Pretty easy. Yes. If I can't do those 2, then I'm just fucking lazy.
Yes.
I can get up 15 minutes earlier to make fucking oatmeal.
You're 100%.
It's not that.
100%.
It's minute oatmeal. It's not a big deal. You know, and you mix it, and same thing. So now it's like, okay, cool. Where do I fit in 2 more meals in this whole 12 hours I'm awake, or 14 or whatever it's going to be? And a lot of times, for me, it's more habit than it is anything else. So if it's really bad, usually it's a stretch. If I'm being completely honest, it'd be like a stretch between whenever I eat this morning, like 10:30, and I'll probably eat like at 9 tonight, right? So if I was really concerned about it, then sometime around 4, if it needs to be, I'll eat half a fucking protein. I'll just take a bite of something, right? Because the reason why I go so long is I get in the habit of working and doing other things that I break the habit of taking the time for that meal. So if I just stop and fucking take one bite of a protein bar, then more than likely I'm going to eat the whole bar. Right. But at least it's the bar, it's the start. Now, the smart me would always have the bar. So then I always have, I always have the meal there to build on. Where I think where people fuck up is they don't have the anchor. You know, so they say they eliminate that bar out of that middle of the day, in my case. Anchor's gone. So then that habit now gets replaced with all the other stuff. Right. Then it's a motherfucker to start it again, where if you just keep the bar, then it's like, oh, okay.
But let me ask you, is that not the same with guys in a training block?
Same thing.
So they start skipping here, skipping that, you know, it's hot today or a bad day at work. Boy, they get out of that pattern of feeling that weight on their back. You know as well as I do. It's game over. It is so much that familiarization, that pattern, and just the training of yourself to feel, you know, the things that need to be felt to get from A to B. Just
showing up. You know, it's even with surgeries and shit that I've had, I'll come in, granted the gym is in my office, but, you know, I'll come in the gym and just grab a bar, you know, if I'm limping or, you know, post-surgery or whatever. And because I'm afraid. If I go like, I love this shit, but don't test me, like take it away for 3 months. You know, a lot of shit can change in 3 months. You know, then all of a sudden maybe I'm just smoking cigars on a beach somewhere and never fucking coming back.
That's true though.
Habits change.
Yes.
You know, so I think people miss that aspect of just, they make it too hard. Like just what's the simplest thing to be able to branch off of? And then the other thing is, that we touched on a little bit, but we should probably go back to it, is they will look at, you know, the videos that Brian has and these other people have, their meal preps, you know, the 30-minute video of the 8 different meals. And it's like, holy fuck, you know, I can't eat that, you know, I can't afford that. And where you almost wish they, and Brian did, so I'd be interesting to go back. You almost wish they would have made those way back when the meal prep was ground beef. And you know, they probably do. Some of them probably do, you know, because there's ways to do it.
Absolutely.
You know, and that misconception falls in there like, well, I can't do that. And you can.
Right. No, absolutely. And it becomes a defeatist attitude because I think we as human beings, there's so much all or nothing. I think maybe back in the day, maybe through evolution over these last 40 years, not that a human can evolve in 40 years, but the mindset, the dynamic, there's been such a shift of all or nothing where people are either all in or they're all out, or it's the very best of, like, you know, like every time I turn around, there's new cups that are like, you know, $80. And it's this brand this month is $80 and it's the cool one to have. And then 6 months later, well, now it's this one. It keeps your hot drinks also as cold for 14 hours or something. Now it's the cool one. It's 80. And they no longer want the one from 4 months ago that did the same thing, but maybe an hour less on the heat. It's like, it doesn't need to be all or nothing. Like there needs to be that understanding that at the end of the day, it's that self-accountability and that self-value that you place upon yourself to how important are your goals. So for that lifter who wants to start a diet and who's got a competition coming, and maybe it's an advanced lifter. I mean, I have so many conversations with, pro athletes around the world from, every sport. And when I'm talking to them and when I'm engaging in conversation, I can quickly pick up on how important is this really to them? You know, how much of this is the concept of, and how much of this is a must have, a must do. And it's that must have, must do that seems to be lacking, because as long as diet for an individual is still viewed as something that's optional, maybe they get to it, maybe they don't, maybe they do it right, maybe they don't, that will never go anywhere that they'll be able to achieve and take their body. They're going to be able to use whatever genetic gifts they already have to be strong. And you and I both know that. There are people born strong. You know, I grew up with guys like that. I grew up in the country. Everybody around me was strong, seemingly, because they had to wake up in the morning and work the cows and the horses and take care of everything, hay, before they went to school. But not everybody fully taps into what their genetics can do. And at the end of the day, we're all human science projects. We are all constantly adapting and adjusting organisms that are going through life, kind of bouncing off things as things are happening to us and as we're happening to things. And because of that, that influence can be paramount. You know, if you take an individual who's already strong or has a genetic opportunity to be genetic propensity to be strong, and you push that and you nurture it, it's no different than a kid who shows a tendency to be talented on the piano, and you push that with them, making them practice every single day, 30 or 45 minutes when they don't want to. They want to go outside. They want to play with their friends, you know, but you see that they've got potential. You see that they've got talent. That's never going to be realized. It's never going to go anywhere. They may always be able to play piano. Absolutely. But without that someone to guide, a coach, to push and nurture and get the most out of that talent, it's wasted. But they have to have it too. You know, I played piano since I was 5, and my mom forced that on me. But it taught me discipline, and it taught me to be able to have an awareness of seeing the difference in myself between when I put in effort and when I put in no effort, when I just called it in, when I worked at something. And as I began to be a youngster and moving forward and seeing, man, this is profoundly different when I apply myself and go all in on the end result compared to when I just sit down, haul around and just kind of phone it in because I'm kind of good at this anyway and I can do it. It's like, even at a very young age, that started to teach me there is a whole lot difference that happens when you apply yourself in whatever it is and when you don't apply yourself. And that can be training, that can be diet, that can be the gear situation. You know, you're jumping on it at the start or you're jumping on it after you've got a foundation. So many things that applies to. And I think it's having that influence in that right coach, that right environment.
And I think I have a little different perspective than most people I speak to on this, because, you know, the typical things that get thrown around is, you know, the work ethic isn't the same as it used to be or whatever. It's, you know, I've been doing this shit for 40 years. And the way I've always kind of looked at it is the top 5% is still the top 5%, right? I think the only difference now is we can see the 95% that don't want it bad enough. You don't need all the stuff to do conjugate training. Now, if you're going to do conjugate training over a period of 10 years, then yeah, they're going to have its applications. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out a conjugate template. Anybody can do conjugate the same way anybody can do linear periodization, the same way anybody can do block periodization. You know, it's, if you're attracted to it and you're like, man, this is cool shit, then do it.